So I hope you're in a good mood for this lesson. We're going to be building a mood board, and that is going to be through the FreeCodeCamp modules going over React. If this is your first time visiting our channel here, my name is Rob. I'm a coding instructor for PreCodeCamp, and we are just taking these videos here that we're doing with FreeCodeCamp modules, and we are trying to cover it from an instructor's point of view. So we are not just simply solving the problem, but we're trying to explain what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do that. And so hopefully that kind of comes across in this video. If that is something that interests you, then make sure that you hit that like button because it really helps out that YouTube algorithm. And feel free to leave a comment down below. We'd love interacting with all of you that are watching this video to know, what are you doing? Where are you at right now? How are you feeling about some of this material? Because that does help us make future videos to make sure that we're getting the information out to you properly and digestibly, right? So anyways, let's go ahead, dive into the code, see what we're building, and let's break it down step by step here. Okay, so here is our mood board that we're going to be creating. And again, I know sometimes it tells us to not style it a certain way, but I believe they give us all the styling on this. And so by the end of it, it will look something like this. And we're going to break it down just like what we did for in the workshop that we did previously, because this is just reinforcing our ideas of we can have a single card component here and it can be replicated multiple times. And so that's all that we're going to be doing here with this. And it looks like it's a great introductory concept for new learners and new beginners who are trying to grasp the whole React thing and how can we make something reusable. And we see this all the time on YouTube. If you take a look at YouTube, you can see how all the videos are laid out in a certain way. Although they don't use React, they're using something that's very similar. And how we can make a simple card here, style it perfectly, and then we can inject it with props, with the information that we need. Because what I can see here is that the color, the background color of the card is being injected through a prop. The photo here is being injected through a prop. And then the title down here is being injected with the prop. But everything else really stays the same besides all of that information. So that's what we're going to be building. I believe it says that it wants us to build at least 3 of these, but we can go through and build it. And we're going to kind of take the same approach that we saw in the previous video, where we can go ahead and hard code in the cards, but it's easier if we create some sort of array with an object inside and kind of map through it. So we're going to go over both ways in this video, and just so that way you can understand kind of what's going on behind the scenes. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. I was pre-reading some of these user stories, and the way that I like breaking things down with this, usually in my videos, I have them broken down into user stories, and I'll still do the same down here chaptered, but I might start with a different, with a different user story to begin with, because the way that React works is it's all based upon this parent-child relationship, meaning that the parent has the information and it needs to pass that information to the child. And whenever I am teaching this to, to students in a live setting, I always start with building the parent first, because then we can introduce the child element or the child component. And that way we can see stuff happening live on the screen. So that's how we're going to break this problem down, as if I was teaching it. Okay, so I may go off a little bit of the script, but we will solve this if you continue following along with the whole video. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the very first user story that I want to hit up here. Okay. Okay, so I sort of made some notes here based off of some of the user stories, just so that we can get an idea of how this is all going to relate to each other. And I always said that there's this parent-child relationship. Well, what is the parent? Well, the parent is the mood board, and the mood board here starts at user story number 6. And so that's kind of where we're going to start. But the whole purpose of the mood board is this is the component that's going to hold the data, and it's going to import and mount the mood board item, and it's going to give it the props that it needs in order to display properly. So we do need to create 2 different components in this. One is going to be mood board, which is the parent, and then we're going to create mood board item, and that's going to be the following, which is those little squares that we saw right here in the example. So each one of these items here is the component of mood board item, and this whole section here to include all the way up here at the top, right? Let me draw a box around this. This whole thing right here is going to be the mood board parent, but it's going to pass information down to a child. So this is a child, this one's a child, and that's how we're breaking this web page up into components. Okay. Like I said, let's go ahead and get started with user story number 6. So for user story number 6, it says that we need to create a component here called motherboard or mood board. Okay. I wonder if I kept saying motherboard here, but I'm going to make this a function. So we're going to do export function, and then we want mood board. And let me spell function right. Okay. And usually when we're dealing with Visual Studio Code, we're going to get some helper type of snippets that kind of do a lot of this boilerplate stuff here for you. But in order for this function to be proper, we need to go ahead and return something. Okay. And so I'm going to put a return in here, and I'm going to put the parentheses in here, and then I'm going to simply do a div, and then I'm going to close off the div. And as of right now, I just want to see if anything displays on the page. And I'm just going to type in hello from mood board. Okay. And so we should see text on here now. And I do. Okay. And so that means that, hey, we have some linkage there. We are importing everything correctly. This function is returning something. Okay. So now that I know that this works, I'm going to go ahead and erase this part here, but I'm going to keep the div. And I'm going to keep on reading on here because it says the mood board should be exported. We did this. You can see that on line 10 here, where we are exporting the function. Next on here, it says that your mood board component should return a div as its top level element. And that's what we just did right here. So already we've satisfied user story number 6 and user story number 7. Next, it says your mood board component should return or should render an H1 element with the class of mood board heading, and then we need to give it that text. So what does that look like? So let's go ahead. I'm going to hit the enter key in here. And remember that with React, we can only export a single JSX element. Otherwise, we're going to get some issues. So everything that we are typing in here to mood board for rendering to the browser has to be in between these divs here. Okay. Inside here, I'm going to try to clean this up to make it look a little more HTML-like. And inside here, it says it wants to have an H1. And again, I'm just doing a real simple open and close. I'll put the text in here, and then we will give it the class name that it wants. Let's do destination mood board. And then for the class that it wants us to give, we have to remember that the keyword class is a protected word because we're actually in a JavaScript file, but we can use the class name with it being camel cased and get the same result as if we were in an HTML saying class. And this one we want mood board heading. Okay. So now we can see that it has been applied, that styling. We are now finished with this user story here of user story number 8. Okay. So this next part on here might be a little confusing because this entire thing here is considered being rendered by the mood board. Okay. So it says your mood board component should render a div with a class of mood board. So it doesn't tell us to put it below here because here is a div. Here's a div that's inside the component. And I probably would have gone up here, but I think it wants us to do it down here, just looking at the code that they had. And we're going to do a div here, again, just open and closing. And then we're going to worry about the class name. So it says that your mood board component should render a div with the class of mood board. So let's go ahead and put that in here. Again, class name equals, and we can still put the double string quotes on there. And now we have the mood board. All right. Next, it says that your mood board component should render at least 3 mood board items. Well, we haven't created that component yet. So let's go ahead and complete that. And before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a space. And then down here, I'm going to create another function here. And I don't think that we'd have to export this because they all are on the same page, but you might want to get in the habit because usually these are different pages as far as components go, but good practice to go ahead and put the export in there, especially if you're trying to get the practices, assuming that we're utilizing two different pages. So we want to call this one our child element, which is mood board item. Okay. Now it is going to take some props, but for right now, we can leave that blank. And in here, remember what we did earlier. We were trying to return a single JSX element, and we just did a real simple div here. And I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm always telling my students, hey, before we start coding a lot into this mood board item, this child, let's go ahead and just put some simple text in here. We can just say hello from mood board item. Okay. Now we're not seeing it on there because, again, I would teach this in class and saying, well, why aren't we seeing it? Well, we haven't mounted it in here. And so what I'm looking for here is mood board item. And then this is going to be a self-closing tag. And so we should see hello from mood board item, in which we do. And so now we know that these files, these little components, they're talking. We now have that linkage of a parent to a child. And so what I'm going to look at next here is I now need to jump back up in the user stories because now we're going into the mood board items information. So let's go up here. So user story number 1, it says create a mood board item. The component should accept props of color, image, and description. And so what we saw from the previous lesson, and I didn't see them using it in this example here, but they utilize something here called destructuring. And so if you know what items you're going to be sending, it could be good practice here for us to, instead of put the keyword props in there, we can totally destructure this right here inside of the function. And what 3 items do we want to pull out? Well, we want to pull out the color, we want to pull out the image, and we want to pull out the description. Okay. And all of that is wrapped up in the curly bracket. Okay. So next, let's go ahead and read user story number 2. So we just completed user story number 1. Now user story number 2, it says the mood board item component should return a div with the class of mood board item as its top level element. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of the text that I put in here saying hello from mood board item. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to give it the class name. I'm going to set that equal to mood board item. Okay. And you can kind of see now we have some styling for that because they already provided that. So that should be user story number 2. That's now complete. And then it says you should set the background color of the mood board item to a value of the color prop using inline styling. Now we haven't talked about inline styling yet with FreeCodeCamp. And the way that styling has to work, especially coming from a prop or even coming from variables that could be put in here from the function, is it almost looks like an object. Okay. So we're still going to do the style attribute, but we want to set that equal to, and anything that could be considered JavaScript or anything like that, we always want to put curly brackets on. And this style attribute here is going to take an object. Okay. And so we can come in here and we have to add another curly bracket. And it said that the background color needs to be based off of the color prop coming in. Okay. So let's kind of test this out as we're going through this and break this down here for you real quick. Oh, another thing that I did want to bring up when we are trying to put inline styling in here, notice that this is camel cased. There's no space. The background color or any kind of styling that has a hyphen in it, the hyphen goes away and it gets camel cased. Okay. So keep that in mind when we're doing any type of styling, but it does take that object styling when it comes to doing inline styling with React. Okay, so let's go in here and let's now pass down a prop here and we'll do green. Okay, so now you can totally see that, hey, our prop of color that we are passing in from the parent It's going to the child, and now the child is using it. Okay, cool. So that should satisfy user story number 3. And then user story number 4. You should render an image element with the class of moodboard image. Go ahead and set the source attribute to the value of the image prop. Okay, that seems easy enough, right? Let's go ahead and go. We're going to go inside the div here, and it wants us to put an image element. Okay, and images are self-closing. We're going to put in the source. We want to set that equal to, again, because we don't want to hard code in the value of the actual image in here. We want to take advantage of the prop, okay, the prop source that's going to be coming in. And so in that case here, we need to put the curly brackets on here, and we're going to do image, okay? So now we don't have an image up here, but later on in the user stories, we do have this image here that we can go ahead and grab. So I'm going to make this look a little more prettier, okay? And I'm going to hit the enter key on this just so that we can see that we're adding these different properties and they're all going to be inside the mood board item. And so we want image here, and we want to set that equal to this right here, okay? Now that image is blown out of proportion. Let's fix that by adding the class that it wanted us to add on here. And I believe it was mood-board-image. So let's do class name. We're going to set that equal to mood board image. And there we go. Okay. You can see how we're slowly getting an individual card. And that's how I try to kind of work with this is let's hard code in this data here. And then we're going to be passing the props down to the child. Okay. And we're just going through it one by one here. Next on the list is this user story number 5. It says it needs to have an H3 element with the class of moodboard text, and its value will come from the description. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. And so after the image, we're going to go ahead and put in an H3 element. And again, open and close. And what does it want us to put in here? Well, it wants us to utilize the description. Okay, so we want to do description. And we want to wrap that in the curly brackets, again, because it's coming from a prop. It's something that can be changed. You know, we're injecting a little bit of JavaScript in here, which is a variable name, and it's going to display it if it has it, okay? This one doesn't have it, but we're going to come up here, and let's go ahead and do the description, and we're going to set that to pathway. I don't know what we want to put in here for it. I'll have to look at the example, but we're going to be getting rid of this here shortly. So I believe that helps us here, but the H3, we do need to have a class name on it. And that class name is moodboard text. Okay. All right. I believe that looks good. Let's double check that with the user story number 5. Yep. And moodboard text as the value within the moodboard item element. Okay, cool. I think that works. Looks good. And then looks like we are now done with all of it. And now we're able to kind of take this idea or this concept of, hey, once we have one, all we have to do is come down here and we can make another one, right? And then we can make another one. And if you want to change the colors, you can change the colors here. We can make this one red. We can make this one blue, and so on. Okay. So that gives you an idea of how you can add 3. Now at this point, you could totally probably submit it and make sure that you pass all the tests. I don't know if it's looking for a different photo, but we can definitely add these different photos on here. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you, again, you could do this, right? But typically you would have some sort of data element in the mood board, and it will house all of this information. We can just use a simple map to kind of map through it. So I did want to take the time and show you what that would look like. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and then I'm going to show you what the data kind of looks like. And I'll just probably do 3 of them. And if you want to add more, you definitely can, and then we can map through it. I'm going to pause the video and then work on typing out what the data structure looks like. Okay, welcome back. And with this one here, all I did is I created a simple variable here called mood items, and it is an array of objects. And those objects look exactly like what we need for props. We got the color, green. We have the image as a string. We have the description as a string. And, we can change these colors however we want. You can even utilize hex colors as well. And if you are going to do that, you'd still want to make sure that they are in strings. And I made a mistake here. I do need to make sure that that is in quotes and everything else. So that way it can still be shown. Now, I haven't updated any of the code that we have down below. So let me go ahead and update it. So feel free to pause the screen, copy this down, and then we're going to go ahead and move on down below. Okay, so we have these mood board items. I'm going to delete all of them but one, and that way I can just copy it for my map. In the previous lesson, we learned about the map, on how we can map through arrays, and you're going to see this all the time with React. So the sooner that you get used to it, the better your programming will be with these maps. And so anytime we're going to do inject JavaScript, we need to make sure that we're utilizing the curly brackets. And when we are going to be mapping, we first need to say, what do we want to map over? Well, we want to map over the mood items, and then we want to utilize the map. Now, the things that we want to have on here is the following, and I'm going to do a double parenthesis on here, and I'm also going to do an arrow function because this is what you're typically going to see. So the two things that we can do with the map, what we can do naturally is, what are we mapping over? And we're mapping over a single item. It's going to be a mood item. So typically what I tell my students is, if whatever this is here, just make it singular, okay? And that is a great way to think about it, because when we're going through the array, we're looping through it and we're only looking at one thing at any time. In this case here, we're only looking at one item at a time. The next thing that I want to have here, that I want to pull out of the map, is an index. Okay, so I have an item that I want to pull out. I'm also going to pull out the index, because anytime you loop through something with a map, you get access to what index it currently is on. And that's going to be important for having a key that we learned about in the previous lesson. Okay, so once we have that, I'm going to do the curly brackets, and just to give ourselves some room here, whenever we're utilizing a map, we do need to have a return. Typically, if I had my own Visual Studio Code and I have a lot of screen real estate, I wouldn't even bother with a return, and it would simply be a simple arrow function. But because I want you all to see this, I'm going to make a return statement here. Okay, so what do we want to return? We want to return this. And again, I do this in class and kind of show you that, hey, we got all of these items here. I'm going to shrink this up. We got all these board items, but they're all the same thing. They all say pathway. Why isn't it changing? If you remember, when we are looping through this, we need to update this data. Right now, it's hard coded in here. So I want to turn this into a curly bracket, and I want to access the item that we're looping over, but I want to tap in to the color. Okay. So now I get to see the different colors. Okay. But they're all the same image. How do I see different images based off of that data? Let me go ahead and remove this. Okay. And then I'm going to put the curly brackets on here. Okay. We are looping through an object. It is called item. And the property that I want to attach it to is going to be the image. And there we go. Now we get 3 different images. The next thing here, they all say pathway. I don't want that. I want that to be dynamic. So I'm going to get rid of it, and then I'm going to open up the curly brackets. And now I'm going to do item.description. And now you can see that they are all different. And if I move my, we can kind of see that we have all 3. Now, the one thing that you are also going to notice is that I am getting an error down below that talks about each child on the list should have a unique key. And that's where the index comes into play. So we're going to come over here, and it doesn't matter where this goes. We can put this at the beginning or the end. Typically you see it at the beginning, and you're just going to do index. Okay. And so now that error that we saw down here is now gone because they each have a key. Okay. So if you wanted to try this out, and maybe I would say as a class, right? Okay, So we are listing 3. What would I have to do in order to get more to show up? And hopefully they would say, well, I need to go back up here to the mood items and add more data to get the rest of the images. So again, maybe as an extra challenge for you all to go ahead and go through is try and do that. See if you are able to get more of those images and the data to kind of show up to look like the example that they kind of gave us up here at the very top. They gave us a lot more, 3 more for us to kind of go through. Okay. So anyways, give it a try it out and see what you think. See if you're able to go ahead and do that. Okay. So now let's go ahead and test this. Now I don't know, because we're doing the map, if it's going to recognize that we are doing more than, or we're doing 3 or not. Let's see. And there we go. We got the congratulations here. All right, so you made it to the end of the video. Congratulations. Now, just like I told you in the previous video, just by going through a workshop, just by going through this lab, it's not going to be enough for it to finally sink in. It's just going to take practice, repetition, and that is where PreCodeCamp could definitely come into play with tutoring, with coaching, with joining the community, because you'll be able to ask those questions, get those questions answered, and feel like you're moving that ball forward instead of getting stuck on it. Like I said, thank you so much for watching. If you did get stuck at any point and you had to come to this video, please let us know where you got stuck. Like I said, that helps us out in future videos to know what do we need to cover better when going through some of FreeCodeCamp's modules. All right, so we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.